Welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. I'm Kara, and today we're putting a Swish and Pop pull tab in a scallop box card pop-up, where our little mice are playing with paper airplanes. We'll be using Bubbles of Joy, Magic Messages, Open Me, just the large arrow, All the Clouds, the scallop box card pop-up. I'll be using the Ivy Remix 12 by 12 paper, and then a couple of the panels from Cilantro and White. And here is the Swish and Pop pull tab. The pulling mechanism is white, and the swish part is acetate, and the tab is Cilantro. I'm using the Shadow Box Card Park add-on, just the grass in Cilantro, and some of the Build-A-House Spring add-on pieces. And I'm using white and canned pumpkin, fake tan, fog, and mermaid cardstock. And I'm also using the Build-A-Basket Easter flowers, and those are in canned pumpkin and fake tan. And this is the slimline grassy hillside borders in Cilantro. So I'm going to start by putting some double-sided tape on the two tabs. Now they are on the front of this box, so the outside of the box, and I'm not going to put them together yet, although I should have, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now I have a piece of cardstock a little bit smaller than the back base of the box, and I'm using the Swish and Pop guide to die cut holes, and the guide makes sure that the holes are high enough on the card. Now I insert a brad from the pulling arm into the Swish and Pop mechanism, and then another brad in the second hole of that Swish and Pop piece, and find the right hole for it to sit inside the card. And I decided that this one is going to be right for my design. So I'm gonna open up those prongs, and it's ready to go on the back of the box. So next, I need an opening on the back of the box so that you can reach in and grab that pull mechanism. So I'm using that tab guide and figuring out where it will be on the back. So you see the larger area of that die cut is the back, and the shorter one is the side. I'll run this through my die cutting machine, and now I have that opening, but I want to clip off at that score line so that it is actually at the edge of the back of the box. And now I can slip that pull arm through that little tab opening, and now it's sitting in the back of the box, and it works. The whole mechanism panel is facing backwards, but it works the same way as if it was facing forward. All right, now with the pull arm pushed all the way in, I can cut it to meet the side of the box, and I'll adhere it with foam tape on the inside of the back of the box, making sure that the foam tape doesn't interfere with the action. In hindsight, I would use a double layer of foam or a thicker foam to do this, because the brad sort of brushes up to the back of the box, and if I had two layers, then that wouldn't happen at all, and it would swing freely, but it works fine. It's just I can tell it brushes up against the box a little bit. All right, now I take off that release paper and put that pull arm into the tab opening, and decided that I needed to cut this down just a little bit. I don't want it to be higher than the score line on the back of the box, because then it would be seen. As I pressed the panel down, I realized I wanted to attach the other half of the box first, because that tab overlaps in the back, and I need to get that underneath the Swish and Pop panel. And now with that in place, I can press the whole panel down, and I did not fold that on the score line, so I needed to fold that now. And now you can see how it folds up and makes the box, and our Swish and Pop panel is in the back. So it's time to put those dividers inside. These grass dividers are from the Shadow Box Card Park add-on. So they work in the shadow box, but they also work in the pop-up box. I put some 1/8" double-sided tape on the tabs, and then I'll adhere them to one side of the box. So I will take off the release paper on one tab and make sure that it's where I want it. This one I want far in the back of the box. So I line that up with that score line of the side of the box to make sure it's right at the top. The tab part's right at the top, so you can see the grass sticking out. This one's going to be, about 1/3 the way forward. And I'm just making sure that they're all straight in line. And then this one's going to be, about 1/4 of the way, or maybe 1/3 of the way back from the front of the box. So now that they're all lined up, I can take the release paper off of the other side of the divider and fold over that other side of the box and take off the release paper for the tab, close the box. And because I didn't fold that tab score line ahead of time, I just need to pinch that at the corner so that I have a nice 90-degree angle. And here is the box all assembled. I want to make sure that that pull tab is easy to grab, so I'm going to just cut a notch out of the side of the box, and that'll give a little room for fingers to get in there and grab at that pull tab. So to complete this pull mechanism, I'll put that tab on there, and this has a little arrow showing which way to go. And I put a little glue on there and realized that I do want to cut this down a little further. I didn't cut it all the way initially because I just wanted to make sure I had some wiggle room as I was assembling everything. And now I can put that tab on there and it's all set to go. So now time to decorate the box. And I'm looking at the size of the side of the box, and I'm going to use my scoreboard to make a score line on this long grassy hillside at 2 1/4. And I'm going to shift it over a little bit and make that score line a little wider so it easily wraps around the corner of the box. I then matched up that score line at the 1 inch and made another line at 4 1/4 inches. It's actually 3 1/4 inches because I used that 1 inch as the beginning. And so it is now 3 1/4 in the front and 2 1/4 on the sides. I glued the grass on all 3 sides, and then on this side that has the pull tab, I'm going to clip off a little of that grass just so that it doesn't interfere with getting at that pull tab. I'm adding Cilantro cardstock panels to the 3 sides of the flaps. And now it's time to stamp out our characters. And so from Bubbles of Joy, here are the mice and the paper airplanes from Magic Messages. I'm not going to use that arrow. You'll see that arrow come up later. But I used Lawnfawn's jet black ink because it's Copic friendly and I'm using Copic markers today. This is a V20. I'm using these violet colors as kind of my gray color. And so with the V20 and V22, I'm just adding some shading to these paper airplanes and softening that up with the 0. Now I already colored one mouse, but I'm going to show you pretty much how I color them all. This is the V20 and I'm finding my shadows with that to start so that I know where I want those shadows. And then I'm coming in with my darker colors. I did a V22 and now this is a V25, just going over those same areas now that I know that, yes, that is where I want those shadows. And you can see I'm really just touching the very edge of that because they're small images, and I'm blending that up with the V20, and I have a little V20 mixed with the colorless blender in the belly, and I'm using a bit brighter color, an RV55 for the nose, cheeks, and ears, and I will blend that in a little bit in the cheek and the ear. All of the mice were colored similarly, so all I'm showing here is where I put the shadows on the next 2 mice in case you're interested. So I'm saying my light source is from the upper right, which means my shadows are mainly going to be the lower left or wherever it looks like something is behind something else. So that would be a little darker. Now, after I finished coloring them all up, I decided to go a little darker in those shaded areas with a V28. So that just gives a little more depth to my little guy here. Using the coordinating dies, I'm going to cut all of these images out and ran them through the die cut machine, and here they are all set to go into the box. Now I want to set the background scene, so I'm using clouds and the little sun from all the clouds. Use my anti-static powder bag to make sure that I don't get anything stuck where I don't want it, and some clear lawnfawn ink. And that's a sticky ink which is going to hold embossing powder. So I stamp that down. You can see that arrow now. I'm going to use that and a sentiment from Magic Messages. And inside the arrow, I'm going to use the pull here from You're Just My Type. I'll use some lawnfawn white embossing powder, sprinkle that on, and then melt that powder using a heat gun. The Magic Messages coordinating dies includes this circle, which is perfect for my design today. And then I used the coordinating arrow die from Open Me. I want to ink blend these pieces with blue distress oxides. So I'll first cover the sun with a sticky post-it note mask cut from a bubble die from Bubbles of Joy. And then using Broken China and Mermaid Lagoon, I'm going to ink blend all of these pieces. I'll use a piece of paper towel to wipe the ink off of the embossed areas, take off that mask, and with a little finger dauber, I'm going to add some yellow for that sun. So I didn't ink over that area with the blue because then I'd have a green sun, and I don't want that. And then this is carved pumpkin, just to add a little more shading to that sun. And I will have orange accents on this card, so that's going to work real well with this. Now, one of the fun things about distressed oxide is it can lift off. So I'm taking a little bit of water inside the clouds and dabbing that with my paper towel just to lift that ink out of the middle. So now I have sort of white clouds up in that blue sky. Pop-up boxes are one of my very favorite interactive dies to use. I think this was actually my first interactive die that I ever had. I just love the idea of adding layers to a scene, including floating pieces by using acetate. So this is just so versatile, this pop-up box, and it's great for an outdoor scene or a party scene, just so many things that you can do with them. Well, I'm just adding the sentiment to the front flap. Glue down the back panel. First, I needed to wipe the ink off of that embossed area of the sun. Tuck the arrow in the grass on the side of the box to point toward the pull tab, and we're all set to put in the little details. I'm going to add tiny little flowers to create a look of a meadow on those grassy inserts using the little flowers from Build a House Spring Add-on. And these are the little centers that go behind the flowers. Nice little detail. So I'll have white centers to my orange flowers, and I'm using fake tan and canned pumpkin for those flowers. Putting a little bit of detail on the fence and the bird bath. These are also from the Build a House Spring Add-on. And I'm using BV 20 and 23 for this. So blue violets kind of to act as another shade of gray. And I'm using that BV20 just to blend that BV23 into the cardstock. The bird bath was made of fog cardstock and the fence was white. And the little water inside the bird bath is mermaid cardstock, and so is the bird. And I cut that out of blue and white. I'm going to clip the belly area off of the bird, and I'm going to layer it so that this little bird has a white belly to it. I wanted to put in some details that would be the the size of the mice, so it's like their little world. As a little girl, I loved all things miniature, doll houses, tiny little animals. Maybe that's why I enjoy lawn fawn so much. But my favorite characters on Sesame Street were the Twiddlebugs, and they were these little bugs that lived in the flower box on the window of the apartment for Bert and Ernie, and they had this whole little world there. Things were their size, but also you saw them among the large flowers, so kind of feel that way with these guys, that they have a little world here with things their size, including this bird bath. And I love how the water just sits right inside it, tucks right into the slit that is cut into the bird bath. Glue that little bird onto the bird bath, and now I'm going to add those flowers onto those grassy inserts. There's so many places to add detail, and you can add as much or as little as you like. Well, here is this little mouse, and he is the one who is going to be throwing the paper airplane. And so I'm taking a mini glue dot and actually going to cut it in half and use that on the acetate to hold the paper airplane. And I'm not sure exactly where it's going to go, but I think I know, so I'm going to stick it on there, but I can change it if I need to. And here is the smallest, sweetest little mouse, and he's going to be catching that airplane. So he's got his arms up and he's ready to catch it. We just glue him back there, and now I can cut off the extra of that acetate now that I know that my airplane is exactly where I want it. So I don't need any more hanging off of there. And then I've got a couple other mice in the scene. So this guy is going to be holding onto a paper airplane, and the way he's holding it covers up his lips, which are puckered in like a whistle or a blowing motion. So that kind of covers that up. And now here's our fourth little mouse, and he is just looking at the shenanigans going on in there. Now for my bird bath and fence, I was not sure how I wanted to use them in the scene, but decided that it would be best in the very back so that it didn't detract from everything going on in front. Added some flowers to the base of that, and then I'm just gluing that onto the back panel. I decided to keep the flaps and sides of the box fairly simple, so I'm using flowers from Build-A-Basket Easter. There is a solid flower and one with the center cut open, and I'm layering them and using that center cut from white. And then I'm going to just kind of cup the petals to give them a little dimension, have them look like they are curved upward. I'll add 2 to the grass on the front of the box and 1 on each side, and this will keep things fairly simple. So when the box is closed, you're just going to see this simple scene, and all of the action is going to happen when the box is opened. I added a flower to each inside flap and decided to go with the little tiny flowers on the front. That just kind of extends that scene forward. So all the details are in, and here is how it sits closed up. And then here is the back. And then here it is opened up, popped open. I'll pull the pull tab, and there goes our airplane. I brightened up the bird with a B02 so that it didn't blend in too much with the background. And because my box is made out of pattern paper instead of cardstock, I really want to reinforce that back panel because there's a score line there and I don't want it to flop or bend at all. So I added a white cardstock message panel. Here they are playing in the garden with their paper airplanes. And this sentiment says exactly what I hope the recipient feels like when they open this pop-up box. I hope you enjoyed the card today and that it inspires you to use the Swish and Pop pull tab anywhere you'd like, even on a pop-up box. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!